Ja, nu har det gått ett dygn i verkligheten sen jag spelade sist ungefär. Så jag har fått lite mer utrymme på mina andra baser. Inte mother base, men på de andra baserna. Så in i helvänke så mycket diamanter jag inte har plockat upp här. Vad håller jag hus? Där är jag. En dörr. Man on fire.
Volgan, the GRU colonel, was burned alive with a shagohod during Operation Snake Eater 20 years ago.
Ja, just det, Volgan.
Despite suffering severe burns to his entire body, he still clung to life. After you left Seleniarsk, Volgan's body was taken to a research institute in the outskirts of Moscow. But modern medicine couldn't explain why he was still alive. Not that the colonel was any ordinary man to begin with. That constant electric current he had running through his body that he could unleash at will. To be honest, I was always uncomfortable around him. Thought I might get electrocuted just by standing nearby. The institute studying him was tasked with investigating and developing human paranormal abilities. The comatose Volgan was used to further the Soviet Union's research into such abilities. But not long ago, the facility burned to the ground. And Volgan's body was never found among the rubble, even though the fire started in the room where they were keeping him. This occurred at around the same time you woke up. If Skullface was right, and a thirst for revenge can turn a man into a demon and keep the dead alive, then this man on fire who's been coming after us ever since you woke up, well, that just might be what's left of our old friend Volgan. It's not over yet.
Var väl redan överens om att det var Volgan.
In Seleniarsk, you brought his plans for a utopia down in flames. That grudge is what's keeping him alive. The day the research facility holding Volgan burned down, a Soviet jumbo passenger jet happened to crash nearby, far away to the north of that hospital in Cyprus. On board the plane was a young boy who was being studied at the same facility. The plane fell to Earth from over 8,000 feet, but the boy's body was the only one not recovered. At almost exactly the same time as the crash, Volgan awoke in that facility. According to the Research Institute's documents, the gifts this boy demonstrated included psychokinesis and telepathy. To protect his mind from being inundated with other people's thoughts, he always wore a kind of gas mask. A rudimentary form of psychic insulation, apparently. We don't know where this boy is, but if Skullface is connected to him, we may cross paths with him yet. This boy is part of a new age, where nothing we understand about the world makes sense anymore. Don't let your guard down.
Ifall det är någon tittar som inte har spelat Metal Gear Solid 3 så är Volgan sista bossen i det spelet. Kan göra det som sista bossar brukar vilja göra. Han vill vara ond och ta över hela världen med hjälp av en jättestor dödsmördarrobot. Och han hade dessutom en jättekonstig superkraft som gjorde att han kunde dels kunna skjuta blixtar ur sin kropp för att skada människor. Och för att göra människor ännu mera illa än bara elektrifiera dem så kunde han hålla en gevärskula i handen. Och han elektrifierade gevärskulan så pass kraftigt så att han flög iväg med samma kraft som kommer ut gevär. Och honom dödade vi i Metal Gear Solid 3. Nu har han kommit tillbaka som eld. person. Jag har tagit den här träningen, månntro. Train with support platform training. Ja, det har jag gjort. Intel Team Platform som jag inte har varit och tränat på. Kram i kram.
Spit it out.
Helt under marken på något sätt. Den här floating boy. Ja, jag ska se nu. Han har konstiga superkrafter och svävar. Typ. Och på något sätt så hjälper han Man on Fire. Och senare i livet så blir han Psycho Mantis som han slåss med i Metal Gear Solid 1. Som utspelar sig 30 år efter det här eller något sånt. Ja, men vad fan?
They've got an attitude. They're not bad at heart. Right. I just wish there was something else. That's role models, huh?
You have arrived at your destination.
We've inoculated the staff with Walbachia to keep them from becoming symptomatic.
That should also contain the infection.
How did this happen in the first place? It has to have been a Cypher spy within our ranks.
If this is so, then why the Kakongo strain? If their intent was to wipe you out.
Skullface said the remaining English parasite was close to the boss. If this latest strain was his doing, he wouldn't have tipped his hand.
It is possible someone brought eggs onto the base without knowing. Stuck to their shoes, clothing.
Well, that makes the most sense to me. And where did the eggs come from?
You mentioned that your boss visited Nzoya Badiopulu.
Sure, but his gear's disinfected immediately upon return.
Then he was not the carrier.
And not just the boss. All staff dispatched to high-risk regions were quarantined on the flight back. When the symptoms first appeared, we checked and disinfected all equipment used up to that point. Any and all prisoners, soldiers, materials, and animals extracted during missions were also quarantined.
So, that just leaves...
The kids!
I have seen children around here. Where are they from?
All over. Some were being held hostage at a mine. Then there were the troublemakers at Yamasa.
Yamasa?
Yeah.
Their clothes, their things. Did you burn them?
They're just kids. We couldn't. And besides, not one of them's shown symptoms.
The parasites don't infect prepubescent hosts. Their vocal cords are not fully developed.
Well, if infection doesn't occur in children...
It is possible they carried eggs on their clothes, and the infection spread from them.
Check the kid's stuff.
I doubt there is any trace left by now.
But if there is, some of those kids must be close to hitting puberty. How could we have missed this? The name Yamasa got quite a reaction from you. I'm guessing the Kikongo strain was released in that village.
Cypher used that region to experiment with vocal cord parasite transmission. The Kikongo strain. The settlements around the refinery upstream of Yamasa were the proving grounds. They would infect one villager and record transmission speed. Dangerous work. If they failed to contain the infection, it would slip into the surrounding regions.
At which point the world found out about the parasites, making them useless as a weapon. Incredible they'd risk such a thing.
The test site was densely populated too. A terrible place for such experiments. No doubt, they thought burning everything would wipe away all traces. The settlements were covered in oil anyway. Who would wonder if one day they caught fire?
Men vad fan?
And so it did. They burned it all. Living and dead. Those remains. But they miscalculated. Transmission speed was far faster than anticipated. It may have been the temperature, or hygiene standards, or perhaps the parasites reacted quickly to Kikongo. Whatever the reason, nearly all villages were swiftly infected, and the settlements reduced to mounds of corpses. Making matters worse, the dry season was ending. When it came time to burn the village, the Moneni River had swelled. Many of the bodies were waterlogged.
Meaning they didn't burn completely.
The corpses still contained viable eggs, and the larvae washed downstream. And when the people downstream drank that water,
That marked the end for Yamasa.
I learned all of this at the mansion. I warned him of the risk of eggs getting out.
And?
We are prepared for any eventuality.
I get it. Putting the oil field back online. The oil leaks, saner. They plan to prevent the spread of infection.
But the oil flow was stopped, and downstream the people of Masa village started using the water again. The PF soldiers deployed at the village were locals, spoke Kikongo. They were infected, and the kids survived.
I've heard enough.
And who stopped the flow of oil?
Don't.
We did.
That confirms it. The source of the Kikongo strain infection was Masa village. And the children brought it here. It is no one's fault. There is no blame to be cast.
The parasites, they were tested in other regions?
Their physiology requires that they be tested under varied conditions. Another test site was in Afghanistan.
So it was the parasites.
Both the Pashto and Tajik languages.
Ja, men det är ju ett fönster där. Varför går jag inte in genom det?
And population density is low. Ideal testing grounds for how accurately the parasites target only the specified language. It is also relatively easy to prevent the spread of infection.
And the results?
The first test, I am told, was a success. Once the
Gosh dang it.
were infected with the Pashto strain, they were all but wiped out.
The Hamid fighters at Smasei Fort.
It was doubly successful. No Tajik Mujahideen or Soviet soldiers became symptomatic.
So the parasites proved to be effective. What about the second test?
Also supposedly a success. A Pashtun village was the target. However, the original aim was to obtain samples of the infected. In this, they failed.
And the village?
The Soviets enacted a standard scorched earth operation.
That must have been the village where Malak lived, before being held captive at La Marjate Palace.
Spit it out.
Having had no time to think on it, the details shared with me may have been false.
certainly seem to like tossing their problems in the fire.
As a boy, Skullface's life went up in flames. Perhaps that is what fuels his fixation with fire.
Your Wolbachia stopped the infection all right, but I still don't get it. How can a few bacteria change males to females? I know they're only bugs, but...
It is not such a rare thing in the natural world. Many insects and nematodes are infected with Wolbachia.
But why?
They nest in the cell cytoplasm of the host, even in the egg cells, with the result that the offspring are born infected.
Mother-to-child transmission.
However, Wolbachia cannot nest in sperm because they do not have cytoplasm. So even a successful infection of a male ends after a single generation. This means the Wolbachia must resort to maximizing the population of infected females.
Sounds like an ethnic cleansing campaign on a tiny scale.
Gender change from male to female is their survival tactic.
So more females means more Wolbachia carriers, so it can keep thriving in the following generations.
But the parasites in a human host are supposed to be a mating pair. If there's no male, there'll be no offspring at all. It's killing itself.
Slow down. This tactic is intended for environments where a single male can copulate with multiple females. Originally, the Wolbachia did not infect the vocal cord parasites. I created a mutated strain, modifying the Wolbachia so that it could infect monogamous pairs. The Wolbachia's greatest multiplying tactic, the male-to-female change, worked against itself in the monogamous parasites. Just as you said. Then, I performed repeated selection of Wolbachia strains until I achieved 100% certainty of male-to-female conversion.
Creating female-female pairs, unable to reproduce.
And you say the Wolbachia affects the host of the host, that is, us, cutting off our means to reproduce?
It is almost certain. Of course, we will not turn female. After all, mammals possess no natural gender-changing function. But some Wolbachia strains can cause cytoplasmic incompatibility in the host.
Is that some cell deformity?
Put simply, it means the altered sperm of infected males kill the female's egg on contact.
And that's happened to us?
Yes. And yet, what occurs in humans is not just simple CI. To date, there are no cases of Wolbachia affecting humans. The fact that this strain causes this effect, is it the vocal cord parasite's affinity with humans? I do not know enough to say for sure.
So the parasite warps the host. Reminds me of what Skullface said.
It is the way of all organisms to create their own optimal environment. Just look at you and this space. Organisms that cannot do this are doomed to extinction. The difference with parasites is that their environment is another organism. That creates a connection between life and life. Parasitism, symbiosis, or death. In this way, the host too is challenged to adapt.
You have arrived at your destination. You have arrived at your destination.
ställa in helikoptern och prata med en person sen.
Roger. This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ.
Personer!
This is B-Quad. On station at LZ.
Du får fortsätta vara on station. Jag ska snacka med den här karln. Hepp! Blub.